Hello everyone, welcome to our video. Today I have a guest with me. It's David Goulet. He is my yoga teacher and he has experiences over 50 years now. Very ancient style of yoga and specialized on breathing. He was a student of Swami Gitananda and he's 70 years old and he's still doing all the exercises with us and teaching every day. And he's a big fan of deep breathing, and he also teach me a lot about this, and this is also the idea how I get started with this YouTube channel. So hello David, thanks for being here.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Do you want to add something to your references?
Practicing and teaching yoga for 50 years. I began in 1969, and we're on the verge of number 9 coming back. So what I learned in India was 9 forms of yoga, and Swami Gitananda was quite emphatic about the importance of deep breathing. In fact, the first 2 weeks of the course were just how to breathe, which you also learned, how to breathe, and then incorporating the deep breathing in every movement, every posture. And he had studied medicine considerably also, so he knew a lot about the physiology. And the importance of that he had learned when he was a child. He studied with Ram Gopal back at the turn of the last century in 1910 to 1920 era. So this is very old and traditional yoga. And yoga has always included pranayama yoga, which is how to breathe, and then many breathing techniques. But just for the benefits of people who are out there in the world, breathing deep is very important, and people totally underestimate that. I classically use the example that we have 1/3 of our chest dedicated to lungs, oxygen absorption and distribution, and the other bottom half goes into digestion, reproduction, elimination, etc. So because we have this much dedicated to breathing and to oxygen, it's quite important. And we have to consider that every cell in our body requires oxygen continuously. We have over 50 trillion cells in the average human body, and they are always waiting for their oxygen supply to be active. Otherwise, they go into a resting state. So when you're active and exercising, they become active. They need more oxygen. And with the oxygen, they go into metabolism, activity, and they produce carbon dioxide.
Mm-hmm.
This is a simple body process that is ongoing when our cells are active. Now you had some questions about that.
Yes.
And
yeah, what we haven't mentioned also, so he's owner also of Pyramid Yoga Center in Koh Phangan in Thailand. So this is where I did the teacher training course. So if you want to look it up and also come to a healing session, this you didn't mention. He's a very great healer with sound therapy. It's really amazing. So, and there are also healing courses, and just check it out if you're interested on the website. So Pyramid Yoga Center in Koh Phangan. So why we actually start this video? So there is some experts, yoga experts, and not only yoga experts, or calling them yoga experts, whatever it is, and also a physiotherapist, like the physiotherapist Simon Borg Olivier. He also claims that the less you breathe, the more CO2 you get, and the more beneficial this is for you always. And he also refers to deep breathing, that this is a mistake to actually concentrate on this. And on the other hand, Anthony Grimhall, who claims himself a yoga expert, he suggests that we should also use carbon dioxide, which you build up when you hold the breath, if you don't breathe deeply, so it kind of builds up this kind of waste product that you have, and that we should actually always be high in carbon dioxide. Otherwise, the oxygen can't be used. So he talks about the so-called Bohr effect, which claims this. It suggests this theory. And he says that if the cells have no carbon dioxide, then the hemoglobin, in fact this oxyhemoglobin, will not release its oxygen. It will just travel off somewhere else. So you need the local presence of carbon dioxide for oxyhemoglobin to be able to release its oxygen and make it accessible to cells. This is the Bohr effect. So David, what can you tell us about this nice suggestion we should not breathe deeply anymore and just not breathe?
Yeah, totally disagree with that concept. I understand body metabolism considerably, and that, as I was saying, every cell in your body needs oxygen. In fact, carbon dioxide is carbon and 2 oxygen atoms. So without the oxygen, you cannot even produce carbon dioxide. So that is the first mistake in this concept of breathing less. And then, of course, when your cells are active, they are producing carbon dioxide, and when there's a higher carbon dioxide around the cells, there's this exchange of oxygen for carbon dioxide. If there is no carbon dioxide there, then there is no use for the exchange. But when you are exercising, you are producing carbon dioxide automatically, and you need to have the oxygen supply at hand in order to continue this process, to keep the cell active. So your bloodstream should be high in oxygen, and the cells are producing carbon dioxide. Then you have the exchange. This is an automatic exchange that is happening everywhere in your body all the time. The more active you are, the more exercises you are doing, the more CO2 you produce, which requires a large amount of oxygen to begin with. And then you have this exchange, keeping the cells active.
Okay, so it's exactly the opposite what he says with the Bohr effect.
Yeah, I mean, the Bohr effect, understand that at the micro level of around the cells, when they are active producing carbon dioxide, the oxygen will automatically go in there. The red blood cells will release the oxygen in exchange for the carbon dioxide. But you have to have the cell active, you have to have enough oxygen to create the carbon dioxide to begin with. So breathing less is not a good idea. It's never been part of traditional yoga. It's always been breathing more than normal, increasing your lung capacity, and then adding breathing techniques and breath retentions and things.
So, assuming we would be in a closed room now with 100 people, so that would be actually the healthy way, what he's saying with the Bohr effect. So there will be not...
Yeah, there wouldn't be much oxygen
at all
in the room. There'd be lots of carbon dioxide because
yeah.
carbon dioxide is the exhaust fume. This is what your cells produce, and your body needs to get rid of it. It's toxic. It makes the body go into an acidic state, which is unhealthy. And the purpose of the lungs and the whole cardiovascular system is to get rid of carbon dioxide and exchange it for oxygen. This is an ongoing natural process. So doing less of it by breathing less doesn't make any sense.
And how does it work when we do in yoga the breath retentions, which increases the carbon dioxide?
It also increases the breath retention held in, increases the amount of oxygen that you're then absorbing. And your cells are still producing carbon dioxide. So there's a balance happening with that.
So it's a balance in there. Okay, so he probably gets confused with that one. Sounds like that. So how much oxygen do we have in the nature?
Well, here we're out in the jungle, so the atmosphere is on average 20% oxygen, 80% nitrogen, and then other minimal amounts of gases, including carbon dioxide. But here in nature, when we breathe out carbon dioxide, it goes to the plants. They metabolize that. They take the carbon and give us back the oxygen. So we have another exchange. And living out here in nature, things remain balanced and the oxygen level remains at 20%. As you mentioned, in the closed room, a whole bunch of people exercising in the closed room, like in hot yoga classes, the CO2 level goes skyrocketing crazy. There's no oxygen left in the room, so you're going to have a lot of too much CO2. Your cells are going into what's called oxidative stress because they're demanding oxygen, they can't get it. And it's a very actually detrimental condition to put yourself into. It's very unhealthy, but it's hot and you can stretch more. But meanwhile, your internal organs are all kind of degenerating because the cells are suffocating.
Okay, sounds like they want to force themselves just to stretch more and don't worry about the effects.
Long-term effects are not really good.
Yeah.
So speaking of long-term effects, you mentioned I have 50 years of yoga practice. I'm 70, I have no health issues, nothing. I'm still climbing trees and doing everything I was doing when I was 25, and I don't feel any different from when I was 25. So this is attributed to actually practicing yoga, ongoing for all those years. It maintains your body, and my practice has always included a lot of deep breathing.
A lot of deep breathing. So this is the proof. 50 years of deep breathing, and I can imagine that it's a better proof that they can do for us with the less breathing.
I would like to see the yoga experts who say we should breathe little or less or hardly at all when doing exercise. How they look when they're 70.
Oi.
You're too big for the camera. No?
Okay. So what else? What kind of other functions does oxygen has? Like carbohydrate metabolism.
Yeah, carbohydrate metabolism, a very standard metabolism in every cell in our body, and it's the carbon is from the food we eat. Carbohydrates is the rice, the bread, and many other foods that we eat. Now what happens inside the cell, this is broken down, and the carbon unites with oxygen to make CO2, carbon dioxide. This releases energy in that chemical reaction, and the result is the carbon dioxide, which is the exhaust gas that we need to get rid of. And this is happening in every 50 trillion cells of your body all the time. So this is one standard procedure. The other one is protein metabolism. If you look at the protein, which our body, we're made of protein, and our cells need to rebuild themselves. The carbohydrate is to release energy and give us action energy. The rebuilding of the cells has to do with the protein, and protein is basically carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and oxygen. So you need an oxygen atom for every protein molecule. This is the amino acids that go to build the protein. And the proteins have hundreds of these amino acids chained together. And every molecule of that chain has an oxygen atom. So it's part of the process. We need to continuously remake, rebuild ourselves, rejuvenate, which is part of yoga and requires good nutrition, of course, and oxygen, which is our primal food. We can go a long time without all the other foods, but oxygen, after 5 minutes, if we're out of it, we're dead. So this implies it's quite important.
So, for example, in Western society where they actually have winter and we have closed rooms, and so we actually need to go out a lot to do some deep breathing outside and not really do the pranayama techniques in a closed room. Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, we just open the door for a few minutes and let some oxygen in.
At least every hour, opening doors and windows to let in more oxygen, because we are constantly using the oxygen producing carbon dioxide in a closed room, it doesn't take that long for all the oxygen to be used up. And if you're practicing yoga and deep breathing, then it takes even less time to use up all the oxygen and fill the room with carbon dioxide. Which maybe a yoga expert would say is a great idea, but as far as your own physiology is concerned, it's a bad idea.
Yeah, I can imagine, like in the like in winter in the gyms, for example, where they have all the closed windows. That must be very bad air in there.
Yeah, it's not really fit for human consumption, but we're getting used to that, and you have all the disease levels kind of skyrocketing, everything's going up, and no one seems to understand why we have so much sickness and disease. Like common colds and bronchial conditions and all these things, obviously connected to breathing, and that's so common in cold countries and closed rooms. It's not because of the cold, it's because of the bad air.
Yeah, the bad air, right. So how would you say does asthma work in this context?
Well, asthma works in any context in the same way as that you're having too much of a buildup of carbon dioxide in your lungs, and you can't take in more oxygen because the lungs are already full of carbon dioxide. And this creates a stress reaction because the cells in your body, when they don't have oxygen, I mentioned, go into oxidative stress. And they put out those stress signals. So we're suffocating. And if you have 1 trillion of them doing that, you start to feel anxiety, stress, and you go trying to get more air, but your lungs are already full. So you need to exhale, get rid of all the carbon dioxide, and then take in oxygen.
Okay,
I have, in my 50 years, I have healing programs, and I've dealt with asthma many times, and I see it as a bad habit, not a disease. If you change the way you breathe, the asthma goes away, and I have seen this many times.
So how do they have to breathe then?
Cleansing breath, as you know it,
breath, yeah.
blowing out, and then filling up. If you don't empty your lungs, you can't bring in fresh air with a good oxygen content.
So what happens in the cleansing breath exactly?
You are eliminating carbon dioxide.
So
Primarily.
eliminating carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
So this means there's just too much of it. So it's another.
Well, it's an exhaust. It's like the exhaust pipe on your vehicle. It's blowing out the old air that's being used, and there's no oxygen left in it. It's carbon dioxide, and that's a toxic material for us. So I understand that when there is a certain amount of carbon dioxide in your bloodstream, it opens up the bloodstream so that more blood can flow. And it does that so that you can get rid of the carbon dioxide and bring in more oxygen. It's not because we need to circulate carbon dioxide. It's just a natural reaction to try and get the right fuel into the cells and to eliminate the exhaust fumes.
So you also teach us that about a scientist. What was his name again? Who was talking about the cancer?
Otto Warburg.
Ah, yeah, Otto Warburg, right.
Yeah.
So
So there's another interesting story and research that goes back to Germany in the 1930s, and he actually got a Nobel Prize in medicine for discovering that cancer cells cannot survive in a high oxygen environment. They require an environment that has too much carbon dioxide, not enough oxygen, and they change their own metabolism to survive in that environment. And then they've changed so much that they begin mutating and reproducing totally out of phase with what your body needs are. And that's what cancer is. It's just something growing on its own. It's not really part of your body anymore. And it has to do with this lack of oxygen.
I guess most of you didn't even know about this. It's really interesting.
You can look it up on the internet. This is all, you have access to all this information now. So check it out, look it up. And then if you actually practice deep breathing, notice how it makes you feel. much better, particularly if you are in an oxygen-rich environment. In the jungle, in nature someplace, there is a high oxygen level. In closed rooms, in cities, in gyms, where everything is closed up, the oxygen level is much less than 20%, so you're not absorbing enough. And it is the basic fuel your body needs. And in my own healing programs, going back to Otto Warburg, I use deep breathing. And I have seen people go from terminal cancer with a month to live to no cancer because they do an intensive breathing program for 2 weeks of accelerated, deeper breathing and more hours of it every day. And the cancer cells disappear. So this has proven to me over decades that deep breathing and oxygen are very healing aspects of our life, and we need to have more of it, not less.
So, but most people, they don't breathe deeply. So how does that happen, and where do they breathe into usually?
We have different breathing habits. Most people, when you're born, it's the diaphragm muscle down here that begins, and it's belly breathing, essentially. And then through years of going to school and sitting and not being active, the breathing becomes more and more shallow. There's an automatic response when you are active, exercising, doing, your CO2 level rises. And this triggers your heart to beat faster and your lungs to breathe deeper in order to get rid of the carbon dioxide and bring in more oxygen. So with an active lifestyle, there's this automatic program in us that makes us breathe deeper. When we change our lifestyle and we sit in school, we're not active. Our brains are still active, but the brain doesn't produce the same reactions. So we have come down to this place of breathing with 1/10 of our lungs. This is an average of society. 1/10 or less of our lungs are used. So 90% is not used.
Wow. Okay, so
your heart is pumping blood over to the lungs to get oxygen, and then pumps it again around the body to deliver the oxygen. But if that blood is going to the 90% of your lungs that haven't been breathing, it goes back empty-handed. It's still got some of the CO2 in it. It doesn't have the oxygen, so the cells are just deteriorating, degenerating. We feel fatigued and tired, sluggish. This is all to do with lack of oxygen.
So how should we breathe when we're exercising, and what can actually help to get more energy back again?
Well, in the yogic system that I studied, it was learning how to breathe with abdominal, mid, and upper, all three parts, and then putting them together into a complete deep breathing.
So first isolated, and then
isolated so that you can practice each one.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of master each one, get it going to full capacity here, here, and here, and then you put them together, and you practice this enough so that it becomes a new way of breathing. Your new habitual breathing pattern is deeper and more complete.
Okay.
And then you add that every time you're moving, you're slouching forward, you exhale, you come up, you inhale. And again, this is part of my original training of how to incorporate the deep breathing. And I carry it on in what I teach because I have seen over 5 decades that this is a very valuable aspect. And I have seen that in westernized yoga, breathing is left out of the picture, which is kind of ridiculous.
Okay, and how should we breathe during muscle strengthening exercises? So it's kind of very exhausting and hard to actually breathe deep, or for example when you do cardiovascular exercises.
Well, I do cardiovascular exercises, and there's in yoga there's the Dundal, Hatha Yoga Dundal, which is the body building aspect, as you know. And in that you breathe more dynamically, you do cleansing breaths quite often, and breath retentions. The cleansing breath gets rid of the carbon dioxide, the retention puts more oxygen in with a little bit of pressure so that you're more like turbocharged in your bloodstream. And this is very beneficial for all your muscle cells that are doing the work. They stay very fit, they can grow, you become very strong, and you feel really good.
Yeah, I can tell.
Yeah. So in fact, the breath retentions in this case are also helping you to absorb a lot and even a little bit of nitrogen, which becomes nitrous oxide and helps to alter your brain into a higher state. So this is part of standard breathing. And we haven't talked about the pranayama yoga that goes into all the techniques, which involve prana, not just oxygen. This is another level, another layer on a different topic. But for the general public and just understanding that breathing deep is much more important than filling your stomach every time you eat. In fact, all the food you eat requires so much more oxygen to digest properly, to metabolize, that we need to add a lot more deep breathing. And again, when we eat, we fill our stomachs, but when we breathe, we're not filling our lungs. So there's a problem there. It's out of balance.
And how does it, the acidic and alkaline level, how does that play the role with deep breathing and breath retentions?
Well, the acid state comes from carbon dioxide and carbolic acid, which is too much carbon dioxide in the body. And it's known to be detrimental, not good for your health.
Acid, okay.
Yes. So the alkaline state is the more healthy state that allows your body's healing forces to engage, become very active, repair, rebuild, clean out the body. And that comes from having more oxygen and lower carbon dioxide. Natural reactions of these two gases, oxygen and carbon dioxide.
Yeah, and as we know, we should focus on alkaline food, like have 80% alkaline food and 20% acidic food.
Yeah.
So
just by changing your breathing patterns, you're already putting yourself more into the alkaline state. So then you're less dependent on the food.
Yeah, less dependent. So less food cravings, less cravings for heavy processed food and acidic food. So yeah, that sounds good. So shall we talk a little bit more about prana? I think we have like 27 minutes. We can still go a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
All the prana, All the prana is. What's the difference between prana and oxygen? Or what is prana actually? Big question always.
Good one. It remains a little bit of a mystical, theoretical concept in the Western mind. And in spite of Western science having gone so far with energy and electricity and all this stuff, the understanding of what an electron actually is still up in the air. And in quantum physics, they're saying, well, actually, an electron has no real existence. It's just a wave of possibility, but we don't go that far. In electricity, you have an atom with a core and an electron spinning around. Now, the electron is detachable. And in the air we have out here in nature, oxygen atoms have extra electrons. When we breathe in through the nose, the olfactory bulb has 50,000 nerves dangling in our sinus cavities and the air passages, and those nerve endings pick up the electrons, goes directly into the nervous system. This is prana. It's power, energy, the same force as electricity, but on a smaller scale. And this is what our nervous system works on. So the prana aspect is considered very important in yoga, as important as oxygen. It's the food that goes to the brain, to the nervous system, to activate, to keep us alive. And the oxygen goes into the body for metabolism and chemical reactions to create energy at the physical level. But the mental level is the prana.
Sounds like a battery, which is charging in.
Yeah. It is, and it's a reality. This can be measured these days, and you know, India has the prana concept, the Chinese have the chi concept. They're all talking about the energetics of human being rather than the physical molecules. And yoga has always looked at all of this together, and the energy that empowers you to do things is obviously as important as everything else.
So it's more on an electricity level, as you could say.
Yeah.
In some way.
It's on par and parallel with electricity. It's our own electricity that's
Which you
available.
can't see, so this is why we don't believe in it, right?
Yeah. But we're using the same thing, and the copper wire that's plugging in the lights and making everything work, it's the same thing of electrons bouncing along from one atom to the other along a copper wire at the speed of light, which is very fast, so it becomes more of a wave. But it's the same thing. Electrons are a form of energy that we have access to, and as humans, we call it prana. We absorb it directly by breathing deep through the nose. If you're breathing through your mouth, you're bypassing the main input. And from the olfactory nerves and bulb, it goes directly up into the brain. Sense of smell is part of this. It's not just that we pick up smell, but in yoga it is known we pick up the prana with these same receptors that are sucking in the oxygen, sucking in the prana. The oxygen goes to the lungs, the prana to the brain, to the body, to the brain. And the two are just as important and very connected.
So you don't even need to eat, you just smell the food, that's already nice.
You could try that. Actually, when you're tasting your food, most of it is smell anyway.
Yeah. Okay, so it's a good trick. So, but how's the prana in a polluted city? It's not the same quality, is it?
Oh, it's like the oxygen. Here you have a high oxygen level. The oxygen is high in prana. And in the closed room in the city, when you're around a lot of metallic objects and cars and stuff, the air is not the same. The prana content is very low. The oxygen level is lower than should be and than normal. So we are designed to be in nature, in a good oxygen environment, high prana levels. Wherever you have like waterfalls and by the ocean and in nature, there's a constant releasing of these electrons that become part of the atmosphere, and we have access to that, and we breathe deep.
Okay, that was a lot of information for now. Thank you very much, David.
Okay.
So this is what our course was all about, and I think it's very helpful information. So digest this, take a deep breath, and see you next time with a lot more interesting topics that we're going to discuss. Thanks for watching. Namaste.
Namaste.